The triplets explained that the real nightmare had started on the third floor. After the S-rank plant monster awakened, a cruel rule of survival was created. Every single day, one student, either dead or alive, had to be offered as a sacrifice. The moment this announcement was made, the commoner faction immediately turned against the nobles and began hunting them without hesitation. Anyone who could not defend themselves was brutally killed and fed to the plant monster. It became a savage and primitive slaughter where people killed and devoured others without feeling any guilt. The triplets told Vikir that although they knew the commoners carried deep resentment toward the nobles, they had never expected such insane and bloodthirsty behavior. One of the brothers admitted that he had completely lost control when he heard Dogma casually describe the terrible massacres as nothing more than a method of survival. However, as Vikir thought about the situation, he realized that the noble faction was not any better. They had used democratic voting to force innocent girls to become sacrifices. In the end, this endless cycle of hatred, betrayal, and cruelty was exactly the kind of suffering that the demon Amdusias wanted to feed on in order to grow stronger. The triplets revealed that they had survived by hiding in the shadows. However, after reaching the fourth floor, they had been captured and enslaved, forced to drag heavy chains until they finally reunited with their master. Fortunately, they had avoided starvation and preserved their strength by licking the leftovers of the highly nutritious red tree sap. After their captors were defeated, the brothers eagerly asked whether they could officially call Vikir their lord and stop hiding his famous identity. Meanwhile, Dogma, bruised and defeated, lay at the base of the tree. He was overwhelmed by rage and silently swore revenge against the nobles. Deep inside the hollow root of the giant tree, a pool of pure and deadly red sap was gathering while Vikir and the triplets talked. Dogma slowly struggled to his feet, completely consumed by his desire for revenge. He staggered toward the hollow root and plunged his face directly into the crimson liquid, drinking the corrupted sap as if his life depended on it. Decarabia immediately panicked and warned that consuming such a large amount of sap at once would instantly corrupt his soul and turn him into a monster. Realizing the danger, Vikir moved like lightning and rushed forward to stop the madman before things became worse. However, before he could attack, a system screen suddenly appeared and blocked his path, forcing him to stop. The system ordered him to wait and displayed a new quest window. His mission was to kill the fully transformed Dogma, but attacking him during the transformation would automatically cause the mission to fail. As the sap spread through his body, Dogma's skin began to crack apart. Wearing a mad grin, he muttered his final human thoughts about slaughtering every noble. His body tore itself apart as he underwent a horrifying and painful transformation. His muscles expanded and twisted into something terrifying. The triplets watched in complete horror as the creature grew before their eyes, while even Vikir observed the scene with a serious expression. When the transformation ended, the system identified him as an A+ rank Hellfire demon, a 4-meter-tall monster driven entirely by hatred with absolutely no possibility of ever becoming human again. Demonic transformation was a dreadful curse that destroyed a person's sanity through infection, dark magic, or magical overload. Once transformed, a person's deepest desires became twisted and greatly amplified, turning them into an unstoppable force of destruction. The fully transformed Dogma crouched in the dark sand, looking completely different as he stared directly at Vikir. Vikir wasted no time and immediately summoned his Beelzebub sword to prepare for battle while the triplets stood ready to support him. However, just as the fight was about to begin, a loud voice interrupted them. Vikir turned around and saw the remaining members of Dogma's commoner faction arriving with their spears. They arrogantly shouted that Vikir was hopelessly outnumbered. They happily called out to their leader, believing that they had arrived in time to save him from Vikir. However, they had no idea what had happened. The enormous demon suddenly leaped into the air, leaving the followers completely confused. With a violent crash, the monster landed among them and instantly crushed one of his own subordinates into the bloody ground with his giant claw. Towering above the terrified group, the flaming monster muttered that he would have his revenge, making it clear that he no longer recognized the difference between allies and enemies. Having lost every trace of humanity, Dogma immediately tore apart his own loyal followers. Vikir ordered the triplets to step back while he opened his pocket dimension and retrieved his hidden trump cards. He swallowed a handful of stat-enhancing candies, raising his physical abilities to unbelievable levels while still remaining at level 1. At the same time, Dogma's corrupted mind was filled with joy as he felt his power increase with every drop of blood he spilled. The former demon slayer aspirant had become completely intoxicated by his new strength and believed that this terrible world was exactly where he belonged. He decided to continue killing, stealing, and destroying everyone who stood in his way. Standing proudly in the blood of his own allies, he appeared entirely consumed by madness. Vikir calmly stepped into the open area and remarked that although the red sap had triggered the transformation, the truth was that Dogma had always been a psychopath. He asked whether Dogma even realized that he had just slaughtered his own comrades, but the corrupted monster showed no concern. To him, the massacre was simply enjoyable. Shouting for Vikir to die alongside him, the enormous beast charged forward. Vikir remained calm and raised his glowing crimson blade, ready to put the monster to rest. As the battle began, Vikir unleashed a relentless series of attacks that forced the demon to retreat. While blocking the attacks, Dogma realized that Vikir was much faster and stronger than before. Appearing behind Vikir, Dogma launched a powerful strike in an attempt to crush him. However, Vikir's reflexes were far superior. He effortlessly avoided the attack and, in one smooth movement, severed Dogma's giant arm. Screaming in pain and fury, the demon released a massive wave of hellfire, desperately trying to burn Vikir to ashes. When the flames disappeared, Dogma stared in complete shock after realizing that his attack had not even touched his opponent. Vikir was already in the air, descending like death itself. Using the second Baskerville sword style, he cut through Dogma's remaining arms with cold precision. Following this, he prepared to finish the demon with the savage tearing teeth technique. Even after suffering such terrible wounds, Dogma refused to die. He dragged his bleeding body toward the dark sea. Vikir calmly walked along the blood-stained shore, watching the mutated demon attempt to escape. Dogma desperately clung to life, and refused to accept death after surviving for so long. Until the very end, he remained delusional and convinced himself that the abyss was his stage and that he was destined to become its main character. However, his fantasies shattered when he saw Vikir standing at the water's edge like a messenger of death. Panicking, Dogma dived into the black ocean, hoping to escape, find another island and rebuild his strength. Yet as he swam deeper, he suddenly became overwhelmed by terror. On the shore, Vikir sensed a massive disturbance and asked Decarabia why he had never warned him about the predators living in the sea. Sweating nervously, Decarabia replied that nothing should be able to survive in the poisonous black ocean, realizing that something impossible was happening. Vikir understood that they were not alone. A gigantic and unknown terror was hiding beneath the dark waters. As Dogma attempted to swim away, a huge shadow emerged from the abyss, and enormous tentacles burst out from the sea. The sudden explosion of water shocked both Vikir and the Baskerville triplet. Without showing any mercy, the gigantic sea monster instantly tore the transformed Dogma into bloody pieces, ending his life within seconds. The enormous tentacles whipped through the ocean, creating violent waves that forced Vikir to shield himself. After the sea finally became calm, the soaked triplets rushed back to Vikir, relieved to see that their master was safe. However, their relief quickly disappeared when a red system notification appeared before Vikir, coldly announcing that his mission had failed because another monster had stolen his kill. While everyone stood in confusion, trying to understand what had happened, a mocking voice suddenly called out from the shoreline. Descending from a dark portal, the strange octopus-like guide of the fourth floor introduced herself as Sila. As rain started falling over the dead forest, Sila mockingly remarked that it was truly a shame that the giant Shadowless King had stolen Vikir's prey, because defeating the mutated Dogma would have become another legendary accomplishment for a level 1 warrior like him. Curious about the name of the sea monster, Vikir listened quietly as Sila floated around him. She mentioned that his impressive performance on the previous floors had already attracted the attention of the tower. Moving close to his face, the guide revealed that she had heard rumors that he had been a legendary sword master in the outside world, and she could easily tell that those rumors were true. After hearing this, the Baskerville triplets became completely amazed and felt immense pride because their master truly was a legendary sword master. Sila smiled widely and commented that although they had technically failed the main mission of the floor, it would be far too boring to allow someone as powerful as Vikir to leave so easily. At that moment, a system alert rang out while Sila explained that access to the next floor had been locked behind a special condition. She then presented them with a dangerous hidden mission. They had to defeat the terrifying ruler of the ocean, the Shadowless King, and take possession of the tree's sap fountain. The triplets immediately panicked and cried out that the system was practically telling them to commit suicide by asking them to hunt such a massive and terrifying monster. Completely ignoring their complaints, Sila smugly explained that the tower had automatically adjusted the difficulty of the floor in order to maintain balance against an overwhelmingly powerful challenger like Vikir. A loud chime echoed as the system officially began a strict 24-hour countdown for the hidden quest. Floating above the silent and deeply focused Vikir, Sila sarcastically wished them good luck before casually saying goodbye. The guide disappeared instantly into thin air, leaving one of the triplets furious that she had thrown them into a deadly situation without providing even a single item or buff to help them survive. After Sila vanished, Decarabia spoke up and noted that they had clearly made some enemies among the tower's managers. Vikir quietly agreed and realized that the system was actively trying to make things difficult for him. As they gathered around a small campfire to rest, Vikir concluded that the creature that had easily devoured Dogma was indeed the Shadowless King. Decarabia confirmed his fears and warned everyone that this monster belonged to the same catastrophic level as the legendary Madam Eightlegs. The triplets nearly choked on their food as panic spread through them after realizing that they were facing a genuine purebred S-rank monster. Decarabia explained that the Black Sea contained no other life because this monster stood at the very top of the food chain and killed everything within its territory. The pendant further explained that even the world-devouring demon Amdusias had been unable to tame the beast. It had only entered the tower accidentally when its original world had been consumed. Decarabia reminded Vikir that the plant boss from the previous floor had only been a weakened mixed-breed clone, while the Shadowless King was a true purebred disaster. Because of this, it seemed highly unlikely that Vikir could survive such a battle with his current restricted abilities. Worried about their master, the triplets suggested that Vikir should finally consume his large collection of stat-boosting candies to increase his chances of survival inside the Cursed Tower. However, Vikir firmly refused and declared that he needed to continue saving every single candy for his master plan, leaving no room for waste. Refusing to rely on shortcuts, Vikir ordered Decarabia to follow him as he walked out into the heavy rain to prepare for the hunt. The triplets remained behind, staring at their master in complete shock and admiration. As the rain continued outside, the exhausted triplets eventually fell asleep from sheer fatigue. Meanwhile, deep within the dark and rainy forest, a mysterious figure quietly moved through the shadows. It was revealed that Vikir had activated his cheat-level artifact, the Picaresque Mask, which transformed him into a small and harmless-looking hound. Vikir reflected on how incredibly powerful this artifact was because the transformation completely restored his exhausted stamina and depleted aura after his difficult battles. In addition, the mask possessed a dark passive ability. Even while disguised, killing enemies still permanently increased his stats, which had been his ultimate training method during his previous life. Looking up at the countdown timer, the tiny hound checked the remaining time for the hidden mission. He admitted to himself that although he had defeated the plant boss easily because of the knowledge gained through regression, he had never encountered the Shadowless King before, not even during the apocalyptic future. There were absolutely no records of the creature within the memories of his previous life. He realized that it was a completely unknown threat that had never reached the surface world. Rather than retreating, Vikir simply smiled, feeling the excitement of a truly unpredictable hunt that reminded him of his old life as an assassin. He firmly believed that every creature, no matter how legendary, possessed weaknesses and habits that could be exploited, which meant that he could certainly bring this monster down.